the empty arena match with Jerry Lawler. Were you in?
Oh yeah.
You were there at
Oh
the
yeah.
time, weren't you?
I was there.
Tell me about it.
Well, I don't know whose idea this was. I think it was Lawler. And the empty arena match, they had two of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of them was the first match where they was an empty arena. And the second one was Monday night in Memphis at the actual matches. It was there was nobody there. And this is the reason. Because Funk, and the setup for this, they worked it on TV. Funk kept saying that the only reason that Lawler is the champion is because he's from Memphis and the promotion is partial to him and gives him preferential treatment. And he wanted him in a match where they had no referee, they didn't have no fans. It was just one man against another man. And so they had that. And you can still find this, the empty arena match. And there's Lance standing beside the ring in an empty Mid-South Coliseum. There's not one soul but Lance, the cameraman, Funk, and then Lawler comes walking in. And so and you can imagine that two guys get in the ring in an empty arena match. Well, it's not too exciting. But what happened was Funk pulled out something to gouge Lawler's eyes out, I think, and Lawler took it away from him and poked him in the eye, allegedly. And Terry was bleeding, and he was saying, "My eye." Yeah. And he would do interviews. He did interviews about that. Oh, my eye. And he would just go on and on. The reason it didn't work was Lawler was the baby face. Funk was the heel. So they're not going to come and see Funk get even with Lawler. If they'd have reversed that, they may have had some business. I don't know what they were thinking. I think Funk later went on to say that was not one of his favorite matches.
That's exactly what he said, and the reason being was because they didn't draw money with it. And
no, they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. The next week was, and that was the beauty about Memphis. If it didn't draw the next week, you dropped it. You didn't have to go through 2 or 3 weeks of agony. They dropped that the next week. I think the house dropped from 10,000. Now 10,000 back in 1980. That's equivalent now of a $30,000 house. Or 40, maybe. I don't know. But it dropped from about 10,000 people down to under 5.
Wow.
And Memphis always drew pretty good, even on an average card. So, and they were drawing for Funk to be in town, to be on the card, and them to draw under 5,000 fans. They was ready to fire everybody, because that was a really, really kind of a bad result, a bad turnout for that type of match. But they did it. I told Lawler later, I said, "Y'all did it in reverse." He said, "What do you mean?" And I told him, he said, "Yeah." Well, why didn't we think of that? I said, "I don't know, but you did it in reverse, man." So they didn't do it again. I'll say that.
Do you, would you feel silly doing that in front of absolutely no fans whatsoever? Would it be really, really difficult to G yourself up to do an empty arena match?
Let me say you're a comic. You went out on stage, right? There's nobody there. How do you know if your jokes land? You don't. How do you know? And yeah, it's a weird concept. And a lot of wrestlers got used to it during the pandemic because they were wrestling in front of cardboard cutouts. So, and I have actually been to towns, independent shows. They'd be like 50 people out there. So you don't know, but you try to give them a match anyway. But they went out there, to Funk's credit and to Lawler's credit. They both went out there and they had about a 5 or 6 minute match. And Lance was trying to call it from ringside, but it just never It didn't have that exciting quality about it, nor was it anything to get excited about, which they demonstrated to themselves and to the talent, everybody that got paid off that following show, that they didn't draw.
Why didn't Terry remain in Memphis longer? He always seemed to just be in for a very short amount of time and just leave again.
Because they didn't want to come in and stay. I mean, he was making more money. He was making like the St. Louis's and the Chicago's, and he was making the Houstons and the Atlantas and the Miamis, and he was making the big shows. They would build big shows around Terry. He was like a traveling Andre, just not as big. Plus, he had all his Japan commitments. So if you wanted him, say in June, and he would probably tell you, "No, I'm in Tokyo. I'm in Japan." So he didn't take a lot. He would make the Tokyo shows or the Japan shows more than he would take a U.S. show because it paid more.